welcome to or back to my channel. My name is Hannah and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in May. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so I read 6 books in the month of May. 6 is kind of a stretch. I technically read 5 full-length novels and then 1 short story. I started the month in the worst reading slump I've had all year, or maybe even in the last year since from May to May, and it took my little short story to get me out of it. But once I did, I read quite a bit in the middle part of the month, and then unfortunately I got sick. Yay! And usually that would not be an issue. I know a lot of people find a lot of time to read when they're sick because, you know, maybe they're staying home from work or from school or something, whatever. I unfortunately cannot read when I am sick. I have no brain power. All I can do is sit and watch TV shows. So while I read no books during that time, I did watch Maxton Hall on Amazon Prime. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's so much fun. But anyways, I didn't finish any books in that period, so now I was left with about 4 days in the month to catch up. And I did manage to read 1 book in that period, but it just couldn't make up for all of the lost time in the month. So here we are, 5 full-length novels, 1 short story. So let's go over stats. This month I had 2 5-star reads, 2 4-star reads, 1 book that was in the 3-star range, and then I had 1 book that was a little bit below a 3-star. So we're kind of all over the place this month. Overall, I would consider it a decent reading month. Not a ton stood out to me or will last forever in my mind, but I had an enjoyable time with most of these books. So we'll start with the short story, and then we're gonna go kind of by series blocks because I did read a lot of books in series this month. So the first piece of writing I want to talk about is the short story that I read, and that was Lovers at the Museum by Isabel Allende. This is a short story that you can find on Kindle. I believe it's on Kindle Unlimited. It can also be listened to as an audiobook. They have a great audio recording of it. So if you want to experience that way, I highly encourage you to do that. It is only, I want to say it's only about 20 pages. So it really is teeny tiny, very, 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 very short, but it packs a punch. It follows a detective in Spain as he basically tries to figure out how 2 individuals ended up coitusing in a museum. And that's all I can really tell you. It's so short that if I say anything more, it's kind of spoiling it, but that's the basic plot. I gave this story 5 stars. I know that some people feel like with shorter stories or novellas, they don't really feel like they have enough content to judge a star rating on, or they feel like they can't or shouldn't give it 5 stars because there isn't so much content. I personally don't have a problem with that. If I don't find anything wrong with a book or a story and it made me smile or laugh, it gets 5 stars. So this short story did get 5 stars from me. It did make me laugh out loud at one point, and it did the job that I was asking it to do, which was get me out of my reading slump, and I cannot ask any more of it. So I highly encourage you to go and read Lovers at the Museum. The next book I read was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This book has been sitting on my shelf for probably almost a year now, and I finally picked it up. I just wanted something that was fun and light and vibey, and this delivered on that tenfold. I flew through this book. It was the first book that I really flew through since I had been in a reading slump. Not to say that it didn't have its issues. I definitely think that the characters in this book were really weak, especially the romance was very, very weak, and I didn't understand sometimes the motivations that drove a character in particular forward, or 2 in particular forward. But regardless, I really enjoyed the vibes of this book. It follows 2 sisters as they flee their home and go to participate in this carnival game that lasts over a period of days in order to try to win a prize from the master of the whole carnival legend. However, when they arrive at the location, one sister is kidnapped, and the other one learns very, very quickly that the game is to find the other sister, and the first one to do that is the one that wins Caraval. So we follow the other sister as she attempts to find and rescue her sister. It got me the rest of the way out of my reading slump. I've never read a book that was set in a carnival setting, so I really enjoyed that, and for that, I gave it 4 stars. I actually went out right after reading this and bought the 2nd and 3rd book, which I kind of regret now, but This was not necessarily the next book that I picked up, but I want to keep all the series together, and so the next book technically that I read was Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is book 2 in the Caraval series, and this one follows the other sister, Donatella. A lot of people had said, or I had heard say, that this book was better than the first one. However, I did not share this sentiment. I think a lot of the issues that I had with the original Caraval book were amplified in this book, and I found them really, really hard to ignore. There were some plot holes that I found very, very grating by the end, and I just felt like the vibes that made the first book magical were very dimmed in this second installment, unfortunately. I also felt that the character of Donatella was just as, if even not more, flat than her sister in the first one, unfortunately. Even though I flew through this one, it definitely is an easy read, turn off your brain kind of read. I found myself not enjoying this one in a lot of ways and feeling it really hard to stay invested in the story or the characters in general. I will say I have 2 highlights, which is that the character of Jax, who we are introduced to in this book and I know plays a pivotal role in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, was a real standout character in this, and I really enjoyed his character. I felt like he had the most personality, the most distinct personality, and I really enjoyed all the scenes that had him in it. And I also felt like the romance in this, although very underdeveloped still, I still enjoyed it far more than I enjoyed the romance between the 2 characters in the first book, because I just liked the main male character in this one a lot more. I just felt like he was a better guy. But besides that, I didn't really enjoy this book. Unfortunately, I gave it a 2.75 stars, which I know is very specific, but I couldn't figure out how I really felt about it. It was somewhere between a 2 and a 3, but I am still gonna read the third one. I'm too far in to quit now, and I really want to read this before I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, so hopefully next month I will get around to Finale, which is the 3rd book. So this book I was actually reading when the month started, but I didn't finish it for a long time because I was in my reading slump and just nothing was hitting, and that was Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. Last month I read Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, and I loved it. I flew through it. It was amazing. I loved all the characters. I loved the story. I cried. I laughed. It was great. This book I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. I still really loved all the characters, and I felt like the story was still really good. However, I think because I was in my reading slump, I just couldn't fully get into it, and I felt like because this is the happily ever after book for these sets of characters, it did kind of slow the tension and the pacing a bit. So I don't really have that much to say about it, unfortunately. I still really enjoyed it. I continued on with the series. I honestly feel like The Boys of Tommen will forever be one of my favorite series. However, this book just was a little bit below the first one on my scales. Still love Johnny and Shannon though. Okay, so throughout the second one, we got little glimpses of Claire and Gibbsy, as well as Joey and Aoife, who are the couple in the next set of books, and I fell in love with the dynamics, the teaser dynamics. And so immediately after I finished Keeping 13, I did pick up Saving 6 by Chloe Walsh, and I am very, very happy to report that this was a 5-star read. This book was so good. It broke my heart. It was funny in some parts, but mostly very, very sad. And I felt like the characters were just so fleshed out, so real. I felt for them. I loved them. I was rooting for them. And I just, there's like no amount of good things that I can say about this book. So this book, unlike Keeping 13, follows Joey and Aoife. Joey is the older brother of Shannon. He's kind of had to take on the role of caretaker in his family because of the lack of ability on both of his parents. And so we kind of follow his story from the age of 12 up until the beginning of Binding 13. When Binding 13 starts off is, I believe, where this book kind of leaves off. We follow him as he meets his future love interest, Aoife, who is a girl who goes to his school, and over the course of time and years, she kind of breaks down his walls, and they, you know, this is a romance, you know, it is a romance at the end of the day. One thing I do wonder about these books is why they are in the teen section of the bookstore. If I had a kid and they picked this up, I'd be kind of leery about the content in it because it is so heavy and so dark and sometimes pretty sexually explicit. And so I kind of wonder whether or not the publishers were just like, oh, they're in high school, like, or, you know, just like throw it in the YA section and didn't really like read what the actual content was. But I know everyone has different opinions on that. Just for me personally, I just feel like this should be like a new adult book, even though it does have slightly younger characters. And then I got sick, so that was the interim between, that was the last book I read in the interim between Saving Six and this book, King of Wrath. I did actually, you know what, before I talk about King of Wrath, I did actually pick up this book, which is a book that I put on my May TBR. It was actually the only book that I picked up for my May TBR, unfortunately, but I have started it. I haven't finished it yet. You can see all the tabs. It's a I don't want to say high fantasy, epic fantasy. I was kind of reading this a little bit while I was sick, but like I said, when I'm sick, I just don't have the brain capacity to be reading a whole lot. And so I didn't really read a lot of this, but I am about 200 pages into it now. So you'll see this in next month, but for sure, hopefully. I would hope that I could get through 300 pages, but yeah, you'll see this next month. The next book I finished was King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This is my first Anna Huang book that I've ever read. I was kind of leery. I watched a video on the first book in her Twisted series, Twisted Love, and I was like, I don't know, that sounds kind of very like unserious, ridiculous, a little too out there for me in my particular taste of romance. But King of Wrath and just generally the Kings of Sin series sounded a little bit more appealing to me. And they have beautiful covers. Like, do you see this? This is gorgeous. And so I did decide to pick it up, give it a try, and I'm actually really glad that I did because I really enjoyed Anna Huang's writing. It was quick, it was easy, it was brainless, and it was fun. Is this a 5-star read? No. I gave it 3.5 stars, which I felt was like fair. This book follows Dante Russo. He's a ruthless businessman. He's a CEO. He's your typical billionaire MMC. And Vivian Lau, who is the daughter of a Chinese jewelry mogul, and they are new money, so they're trying to build their status in society and be accepted in some of these older money circles. And to do that, he arranges a marriage between his daughter Vivian, who is our FMC, and Dante, who is our MMC. And we kind of follow their story as Dante and Vivian, it's a romance. You know what happens. You know what happens. They fall in love. But how they get there, I don't want to reveal. So we had some sprinklings of, I believe it was Christian and Stella, who are the main characters of the 4th book in the Twisted series. And I was like, okay, serve, per. So I actually went and I got the whole Twisted series. Well, I picked up Twisted Love and I did read that. You'll hear about that next month. But I changed my mind on the Twisted series and I was like, you know what? I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed Anna Huang's writing. Might as well give her other series a shot because I don't want to read like an interconnected series and get spoiled for anything when I like might have an interest in reading it. So I decided to halt this series. I do have King of Pride right here, but I wanted to halt this series and start reading Twisted. So that's exactly what I've done, but you'll hear about them next month. Anyways, this book was good. It was fun. It was exactly what I was craving and I enjoyed it. All right, so those are the 6 books that I read in the month of May. I know I keep saying that I am going to read more and more every month, but you know. And I also keep saying that I'm gonna make more videos, but so unfortunately, who knows if you'll see me until the end of next month. Hopefully you will. Hopefully I'll find some motivation and some drive and ambition, but if I do not, I'll see you next month. You can follow my Instagram and my TikTok. I post a little bit more frequently on those 2 platforms if you want to see what I'm currently reading or what my thoughts are on books or recommendations or anything like that. Follow those 2 platforms if I don't see you until the end of next month. But thank you for watching and have a good rest of your day. Oh, I didn't need to sing that. I'm sorry.